Welcome back to the Omni stage, everybody. Welcome back to Event Tech Live USA and Canada 2021, and a session that I was particularly looking forward to today because it's with somebody who we've been working closely with in the run-up to this event. Taking a look at the insight into the tech behind Event Tech Live's agenda is Mr. Joe Atkinson, joining us from Lineup Ninja. Joe, great to see you.
Hi, James. How you doing? You've been working hard this evening. Well done. Sterling effort, mate.
Well, Thank you very much indeed. We've all been working hard, and none more so than you and the guys over at Lineup Ninja who've been coordinating all of that agenda stuff for us. So, Joe, I'm going to hand over to you to take it away, and I'll see you a little bit later on with some questions.
Great. Thanks a lot, James. Hi, everyone. My name's Joe, and I'm going to be talking about the tech that was used to put this agenda for this event together. Today we've seen some amazing talks from all sorts of kind of industry luminaries and heavyweights, and there's been some real kind of thought leadership. You're going to get none of that in this session. This is definitely going to be much more like a practical problem that's faced by lots of event organisers, our response to it, a bit of a case study, and frankly, it's going to be a little bit of a product plug. So if you don't like the sound of that, here's your chance to leave. Essentially, we're going to be looking at our tech and how we helped Event Tech Live to pull this agenda together. So, what you will get from this session is, by the end of it, you'll understand what smart agenda planning technology is, and how Event Tech Live used it to plan this event's agenda. And if you stick to the very end, there's free stuff for you as well. Okay, so you might be looking at this slide and thinking, smart what now? Smart agenda planning? What's that all about? What's this latest thing that some blokes have turned up and decided they were going to try and sell us? Well, to understand that, we need to look at some kind of conventional agenda planning processes. So, for example, conferences, the usual process that you get there is something like gathering the content, and that might be recruiting keynote speakers and VIPs, running a call for papers, and then abstract submission and review. And that's a really key part of the process for pulling together a conference. Once all that gathering of content has been done, then you're scheduling the sessions, confirming details and practicalities with speakers. Then you've kind of planned your agenda. Then it's how do you publish it to then drive traffic to your event. So that's kind of more sort of scientific conferences and stuff. Exhibitions. Now I've got a bit of a blurred line between the two here, because conferences, the word conference can mean all sorts of things, and lots of exhibitions have got conferences as like running as part of them, and vice versa. You know, some conferences have a bit of exhibition on the side. But in our experience, when we're working with exhibition organisers, the process tends to be a bit more complex, and so you'll have, possibly recruiting keynote speakers from the beginning, and maybe an open call for speakers, or possibly they will have like editorially generated sessions where a panel of experts will come together and think, well, what are the hot topics in the industry this year? Let's go out and recruit some speakers to speak to that. The key point is that that the agenda scheduling task might start early on at the very beginning. It might be that they schedule some sessions that they then sell to sponsors. They schedule some editorially generated sessions, and they schedule the keynotes, and then they recruit to them, while at the same time having an open call for speakers that they then have to schedule the sessions later on. So the scheduling runs through this process almost from start to finish. And that can also happen at conferences as well. So what I'm saying is agenda planning processes, they're not entirely just a simple linear process. And so far in the event tech landscape, this area, the abstract submission and review, is pretty well served by the existing vendors. There are some really good abstract submission and review products out there on the market. But this whole piece, the whole agenda planning from start to finish isn't really as well catered for. And that leaves planners with some problems. Popular tools that people have to use are things like Google Forms or Smartsheets or even SurveyMonkey, that kind of thing, to gather all your content. Often we're planning them all on Excel spreadsheets, and that's where the agenda will be planned. And then all that stuff's pulled together. That schedule will then there'll be multiple copies of it floating around. They'll be sent off to the production team, sent off to the the website people to upload onto the website, maybe the mobile app people. And also, you've got your communication with the speakers, which is often just done with emails, individual emails, or possibly, MailChimp or something like that. But there isn't like an integrated product stack. Oh, sorry. Thanks. Um, thanks. So can you see my slides now? Right, okay. So what was I talking about? Agenda planning processes. This is what I was talking about, and hoped you were looking at. Basically, we've got these processes, which are there's quite a lot of complexity there, and this is the tech stack that we're working with. Google Forms, Excel, and email. Now we love these tools. There's lots of good things about them. They're affordable. We understand them. We're familiar with them. We know how to use them. That doesn't mean that they're the best tool for the job, though. And they can often leave us, when it comes to this agenda scheduling, with a problem that might look familiar to some of you out there. So in this case, we're planning that agenda using Post-it notes on top of a flip chart paper, but this could equally just be a spreadsheet where you're filling in cells with the session titles as well. And this is a photograph that I took for an event I was planning back in 2015, when I first came up with, we need to solve this problem. So the kind of thing that happens is you've got your agenda, you're kind of building it, you're deciding which sessions go where, and then, oh, hang on, Claire emailed and says she can't do the Thursday. Oh, no. That was the last slot in a room with reliable Wi-Fi. Okay, what else can we move? Well, we could move Bob to Ali's slot and move Ali to Tuesday. That means 3 finance sessions running at the same time. Okay. How about we put Ali in room 4 at 10 o'clock on Wednesday? Oh, wait, hang on, Ali's on the panel then. There's all this kind of checking of all these details and making sure that all these constraints and dependencies that each of these sessions has are met, and so that a horrible scheduling error isn't lurking in the agenda. And that's a lot of mental effort for planners to put in, and it doesn't actually generate that much value. It'd be far better for event planners to be doing tasks that add more value. Now, it's fine if you've only got like 20 speakers or something. The problem isn't a massive one, and actually using a spreadsheet is absolutely the right tool to use. When you're starting to get to an event that is the same size as Event Tech Live, where we've got about 100 sessions, as events get bigger, the amount of time to schedule them doesn't grow in a linear fashion. So let's say you've got 20 speakers and it takes about under 10 hours to schedule it. Let's say it's now 4 times bigger and it's actually taking 10 times more time to schedule it, because there's all that complexity and all that interdependence between those different sessions. So as you get into bigger events, this becomes a much, much bigger problem. So you might say, well, that's been a problem historically, but now we're moving into virtual and hybrid events. We might have slightly smaller programs, more regular events, and it's perhaps not quite such an issue. If only it was so. You've now got the issue of, well, what about virtual sessions? Are we going to be scheduling pre-recordings? Are we going to have rehearsals? For every session, you might end up having to schedule 2 sessions because you've got these pre-event sessions that are happening as well. What about for hybrid events? Are you going to have some speakers delivering virtual sessions and some delivering physical sessions? Are you going to have 2 separate agendas? Are you going to have some people who are speaking on both the physical and virtual sessions? Agendas, and if so, how do you make sure that they don't have any clashes? How do you make sure they've got sufficient time to get on stage and then get off and get to somewhere where they can access good enough internet connection to deliver their virtual sessions? What about the situation where you've got speakers and or panelists, or the audience, all in multiple different time zones? How do you find the best time to schedule that session? So it all adds up to new levels of scheduling complexity for virtual and hybrid events. So that's why we feel there's a need for a different process, and this is how we've kind of designed it. So you start off, actually, when you're planning an event, you usually know things like what are the dates, what are the venues you're going to be using, which are the tracks or the main themes for that conference or exhibition. Labels I'll talk about in a moment. But then scheduling rules might be things like all sessions in this track have to go in this one theatre, for example, or any product launch needs to happen before a deep dive into the product features kind of thing. So you map some of that stuff out first. Then you build smart forms to capture the data that you want from your speakers. That then means that allows you to then use, I'm calling it AI, it's a bit generous, to basically run an algorithm which can use the data that you captured from those smart forms. It understands the shape of your event and it understands what the data means. So it can really help you cut out a lot of the time with the scheduling by kind of giving you sort of decision support as you go through. I'll show you that in practice shortly. Then once all that's done, now you can get back to your publishing your agenda on your event website and all the rest of it. Okay, so what does that look like in practice? How have we, Event Tech Live, used it here? So it's a 3-day event. It's got 100+ sessions. So we're right over on that right-hand side of the graph, lots of complexity for the scheduling. So how do they go about it? Well, the tech stack they used is basically, they used Lineup Ninja for the speaker management. They used Events Case for registration, and obviously you should know by now that we're all using Grip as the virtual platform. And various others, Glisser and so on. And of course, First Light Media doing the production and live streaming. So going back to the little smart agenda planning process, I'm going to go through in steps. So this is them modeling Event Tech Live, the dates. So setting the time zone, what are the dates for the show, what are the default session durations and changeover time between sessions. Then what are the locations or places? Now, because it's a virtual event, these are actually virtual locations, but it doesn't really matter. It could be virtual or physical. And on the left-hand side here, this is the list of the locations. So here we are now on the Omni stage. And they've also got their tracks here as well. So they've assigned their tracks to different stages. And in this case, Event Tech Live, they've used the tracks for the event types. They also group their sessions by tech type, but we'll have a look at that in a second. Another interesting thing about this is that they also have tracks for speed networking and workshops, and they have specific locations for those. So for these locations, any of these tracks can run on them, and any of these tracks can run in these two locations. And we call that like loose track affinity. It's not like this track has to happen only in this stage. Whereas for these ones, it's a one-to-one relationship. So that's like a scheduling rule that they've put in effectively to say, these sessions have to happen in those places. So we've zoomed in now to this track, the awards, galas and dinners track, and we can see that that can take place on the Omni stage, the Phygital stage, and the Smart stage. And also there's like a little scheduling rule here saying that those sessions in that track have to happen on that stage. They could additionally have set a limit for these tracks to say, actually, I only want one awards, galas and dinners session to happen at any given time. And that would help them to avoid a kind of some of the tracks getting a bit like lumpy in that, you could have several tracks, several sessions from each track running at the same time, and then big gaps later on where there are no sessions from that track. But they chose not to, I guess, because there's only 3 stages. They've then got labels which allow them to group various different things. In this case, they're using it to group speakers based on what stage of the speaker workflow they're at. So all these speakers have got one rehearsal booked at this point. They've got this second kind of track, which is tech type, and they've got session type, so panel sessions or solo sessions. Once they've modeled all that stuff, they can now build their smart forms to capture the data they want. And so they have 3 concurrent submission workflows going on. So there's roundtable submission form, which these are like sponsored sessions which are paid for by exhibitors. There's then, this is the open call for speakers. And then they had invites that went out to a few like kind of VIPs and keynote speakers. So each of these forms have got different questions because the the data they need to capture and the subsequent scheduling is going to be different. So the requirements are different. So as an example, if we just have a look at the call for speakers one, these questions here, what type of session is it going to be, solo or panel? And this question you can see here is linked to the labels. So when a speaker is filling this in and they say, I want it to be a panel session, that will then label it as such. So later on, any kind of scheduling that happens is going to associate, it understands that that's going to be a panel session. Same thing with the tracks. So once the submitter puts in, this is going to be for exhibitions, that then gets assigned to the exhibitions track, and all the subsequent scheduling is going to work based on that. So the next step is using AI to plan the agenda. What does that look like? So this is the agenda planning screen, or like a zoomed in view of it. Each column is a location or a stage. Times down the side. The colored blocks are the sessions, and the colors within them relates to the track for that session. This isn't the EventTech Live agenda here. This is just an example event. So we can also see that we've got these stripes down the side. Green means there's no problem with it. Everything's good with the scheduling. Red means there's a problem. And if we just let this run a little bit, we can see down here it's telling us what that problem is. So this theatre does not have this label, which is associated with this session. So it needs to go somewhere else. Okay, so we can drag it and drop it. So let's pick it up and see if we can move it. As we do pick it up, you'll see all these time slots get grayed out. And if we try to put that session into one of those time slots, it will tell us why. Okay, so it's saying that theatre doesn't have that label. If we put it down here, the start time's available, but the session's too long to fit. Or, okay, there's a changeover period between sessions. That means we can't schedule it then. There's a white blob up here. Let's move it up there. When we do, it goes green. So that means that we can schedule it, but it's gone amber. And that's because the speaker now needs to confirm that they've seen the new time for the session and they're happy to present at that time and location. So that's like a kind of manually scheduling with the AI running in the background, giving the user real-time feedback, saying, yeah, I'm checking all these details for you. This is the best place to put that particular session. Once you have scheduled your session, in this case, you can then send out all these bulk emails or automated emails at different steps of the process, saying, thank you, here's your session, please confirm the time that you can make the time to present it, and so on. So all of that emailing is kind of automated, or at least done in bulk. So back to the agenda planning. This is EventTech Live's agenda as they were planning it, and so this is the session that we're in now. You'll notice that they also have these little like thumbtack pin icons here, so that means that they can pin these sessions onto the agenda, and that means that they can't then pick them up and drag them and drop them around. And it also means they can do various kind of bulk automated scheduling. So they could say, remove all of the unpinned sessions, which would be all these ones, take them all off the board, off the scheduling board or the agenda, put them onto the unscheduled sessions list, and then run the auto scheduling algorithm, which is what we'll look at now. So here's another example event. It's got a narrower view for the stages, but it's still the same thing. And it's currently got a completely blank agenda, and we want to build it from scratch. So we're going to scroll down the right-hand side, and we can see all these sessions. There's about 180 sessions for this event. So, right, let's just get the algorithm to run and build our agenda for us. That's going to go in the background. It's going to look at every one of those sessions in turn, and it's going to find an available slot where it can be scheduled, put it in, and then it's going to run through all the others and evaluate where they can go. And occasionally it will find places where it's got to kind of backtrack and go and unschedule some and put them back in. In this case, it's been able to build a complete agenda. It actually that was a slightly sped up. It takes about 2 minutes to schedule 180 sessions, as opposed to several days if you're doing it manually. So it's a huge time saver. And here's our Lineup Ninja user group Slack channel, and here's Paul Allott, who's one of the event directors. just say, yeah, I used the auto scheduling for the first time. So I was asking him, how was it? And he's saying, it worked, but I realized that actually I needed to have all my sessions of a certain length on one stage and so on. But nevertheless, he was kind of happy with it. Okay, so that's the scheduling. One of the other challenges with an event like this is the speakers will submit their offer several months before the event, several months before registration is open, and several months before the virtual platform is available. So what that means is we've got all these speakers' bio data, which we need to be able to publish a draft agenda. So we need that data early on. But it then means that when people subsequently register and fill in their bio details for the virtual event platform or one-to-one app or whatever, you've got two sets of data. So what we're doing here is we've got a deep integration with Grip, where we're querying the database and pulling back the registrants, and then we're matching them to the speakers. And a similar thing with Grip exhibitors, where we want to match up sessions that are being offered by or being led by exhibitor representatives. We want to match those to the companies that are the exhibitors within Grip. I hope this is making sense. So we need to synchronize that speaker data, and we also need to match sessions to the exhibitors. So we fetch the data, and then we've got these two lists. We've got a list of speakers, which we can compare to Grip registrations. And we've got like a little bit of fuzzy logic, which runs a little algorithm to try and match these up. In this case, it's found some matches. So yeah, Mark Johnson, Margaret Lonsdale-Pence, who just gave a great talk before me, and so on. But then it's found some of these which it's not quite so sure about. So it's saying, well, Catherine Shaw or Kishore Sawa. So it's saying, well, that's the same letters as this. Maybe that's a typo. Could it be the same? But a human can now look at that and say yes or no. That's a match. It isn't a match. There's a more interesting one down here where Carolyn Strauss had actually submitted her talk offer with one email address, and then when she registered, she used a different email. So that meant it wasn't an obvious match, but fortunately, the fuzzy logic has picked Carolyn there, and so the event organizers were able to sort of click, yeah, that's the same person. Very similar thing with exhibitors. So here are all the list of all the sessions, and it's looking to pick up things like, okay, so the speaker is Mahogany Jones at Event Specialists. Event Specialists, that's one of our exhibitors. Great, we suggest that probably a match, and so on. So that then means that all the data in Grip can be kind of linked up, and any duplicates can be resolved, and there won't, and the correct version of the biographical data will be used. So now we know all the data's right, we can publish our agenda. Now what Event Tech Live did was they wanted to publish a draft agenda several weeks before Grip was live. So if you look at the event agenda today, it's in Grip, and that's on the website. But for several weeks beforehand, they published it to. This is basically a page generated by Lineup Ninja. Lineup Ninja ships with its own little web app. So this was the agenda. They were able to publish that just embedded as an iframe in their website for the show. Then once the Grip platform went live, that was replaced by the slightly more functional agenda here, which is linked into all the Grip data as well. Okay, so what do they think? Well, I don't want to plug things too much, but they've done some Capterra reviews. So if you look up Lineup Ninja on Capterra, you'll find you can read this at your leisure. But essentially, they're pretty happy. We're really happy working with them as well. And we're really happy to hear things like, overall it's a great experience. We've used it for 3 years and now for Event Tech Live, and we'll continue to do so. So that's really good to hear. Very similar thing from Adam Parry. But also really important to us is the guys behind the scenes. So Matt, who's the technical producer for First Sight Media, doing all the AV and live streaming. He also found that being able to see all of the agenda data in one place was really helpful for them to be able to support the speakers properly, and to be able to, tell them things like when they haven't got their slides on the screen. So I did promise you a freebie at the end, and this is it. I mentioned there's this problem with virtual and hybrid events where you've got all your speakers in different places or your audience. So if you want to find the best time to schedule a session, just go to lineup.ninja/tools. We've got this free little widget on there. What I've done here is I've set the event time zone to America, Chicago, so Central Standard. Today's date, the show times. I've got my first speaker is in India, one in London and one in New York. So then I can see here, these are the possible session times. These are amber because they're not perfect for anyone. This is gone red because that's a really bad time for our speaker in India. So we can then have a look across here and say, well, yeah, one of these times is probably best because it only inconveniences one of the speakers. So yeah, feel free to have a play with that. You don't need to put your email address in, that you don't have to pay for it. It's completely free, no sign up required. It's just there for you to use. Okay, and if you'd like to find out more about what we do, or give us any feedback about what you've seen, feel free to email me, joe@lineup.ninja, or look me up on LinkedIn. There I am, Joe Atkinson 01. Okay, thanks for your time. I'll finish off there.
And I'm back in. I can still see Joe's screen, but in a couple of... Yeah. I can see Joe now. Much nicer to look at that view. Joe, thank you very much. Thanks for giving us that bit of insight there. And yeah, I think it's really important. It sort of feels a little bit like we're maybe blowing our own trumpet, but you know, we are running a show called Event Tech Live. It's all about event tech, and inevitably behind the scenes, there are a lot of partners powering this event. And we've worked closely with you now, as you say, for a number of years, and it's become an integral part of the operations in the run up to the event. Some of the functionality that you pointed out there, you know, it is absolutely critical on a day-to-day basis. We're on and off there, you know, every couple of minutes changing things. There are constant emails coming in from those speakers, and we're updating stuff in there. You know, one of the examples that I like to give is, you know, as people are going through the rehearsal process, we ran technical rehearsals a couple of weeks ago, and we can use Lineup Ninja to easily identify who has completed a rehearsal and who might still need to book one and who may need to be chased a little bit. That's a simple feature that we built in there to allow us to just filter the speakers out. One thing that I wanted to ask you is on the whole subject of pivoting. In this sort of last 12 months where loads of the industry have suddenly had to go, crikey, what do I do? We need to find other ways of doing things. It strikes me that the fundamentals of the Lineup Ninja system probably doesn't need to change that much. The process and the premise of booking speakers for an event has broadly remained the same, whether that be for live or virtual. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was interested when you were talking to Margaret in the last session. You were talking about pivoting and how the whole, you know, it's been such a disruption. COVID-19 has been such a disruption for the events industry, and how, you know, certain small like startups and smaller businesses have been able to pivot much more easily. For us, the challenge really was actually it was really tempting. We saw everyone else around us was all pivoting, and we thought, well, we kind of don't really need to, because we're still relevant in a virtual or hybrid environment just as much as we are with physical or online. Our product still offers the same value, but a lot of our clients suddenly were having to look at all these other different types of technology, and so the sales leads all dried up because everyone was just like, how on earth do I run a virtual event? They weren't thinking, how do I optimize my speaker management process? So at that point, it was really tempting for us to think, oh, we need to kind of jump on the virtual bandwagon. So the challenge for us was not to pivot. The challenge for us was to hold our nerve and not pivot, really. So yeah, it was kind of an interesting time for us.
Yeah, and I mean, arguably from our point of view, you know, I've said this before, the contact that we have with speakers in the run up to the virtual event is significantly more than the contact and the communication that we have when we run the live event. If you think about it, you know, when we run the live event, we don't get speakers in for a rehearsal on the stage 2 weeks before. You know, so there's an entire other level of communication that we're building in doing the virtual event that we utilize the Lineup Ninja system for, and that wouldn't exist in a live event. So arguably having a platform like that for a virtual event is probably, from my point of view, even more important and even more effective.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you that. Hybrid in particular, but virtual events, but in particular hybrid events, which essentially, if you're running a hybrid event, you're running a physical event and a virtual event. And virtual events, as you just said, the program can be more complex because for every one session you're scheduling two because you've got a rehearsal or a pre-recording, or possibly you've got a pre-recording and then you've got a live Q&A as well. So the number of sessions you've got to schedule suddenly max gets loads bigger. But then if you are also having a live program alongside it, it's massively complex. So yeah, I think we become far more relevant. And I think as the industry kind of gets more comfortable with virtual and hybrid and start, really thinking about, how do we make our processes more efficient, and how do we, boost our productivity and our kind of operational efficiency, then they'll be looking at solutions like ours. And I think we can really offer them a huge amount of value there. So, yeah.
Absolutely. No, it's been great to hear from you today, and we make no apologies for showing a little bit of the behind the scenes operations that have gone in the run up to the show this week. Joe Atkinson from Lineup Ninja. If you would like to connect with Joe, please do so via the virtual event platform. Joe@lineup.ninja is his email address. Send him a message and I'm sure he'll be delighted to hear from you. Joe, it's been great to see you today. Thanks very much for your session, and we'll see you back on the Omni stage for our next session very shortly.